Thank you very much for inviting me here. I decided to, let's say, discuss a bit about what diplomacy will be in the next year, in the next future, especially considering that the world is changing toward a more globalized world, and so probably diplomacy as well as politics will have to change in the near future. Thank you. Diplomacy always had a fundamental role in relations between states, religions, and societies. Wars have been fought. Peace treaties have been signed because of diplomacy. None of the actual nation and supranational equilibrium we now have could have been in place without diplomacy, simply because diplomacy is the core of and the sense itself of politics. The relations between states, as you all know, are based not only on the diplomatic network we created over the centuries with the international community, but also on several other types of mediation and exchange, often even informal, that goes beyond the simple formal diplomacy between countries and that takes the name of cultural diplomacy. Well, if the kind of diplomacy we were accustomed to has always been based on formal agreement, cultural exchanges, institutional and informal meetings, then with the rising of the non-state actor within the international scene, sooner or later, national states will have to reshape their own model of diplomacy on the basis of changes that the international system is facing. In 1648, after the signing of the peace treaty that ended a war which devastated Europe for 30 years, the Westphalia Treaty changed forever the interstate system of relations. From the treaty originated some of those basic principles that are still in place today, such as the sovereignty of states and the fundamental right of political self-determination, the principle of legal equality between states, and the principle of non-intervention of one state in the internal affairs of another state. Thus, the Peace of Westphalia is said to have ended attempts to impose supranational authorities on European states. At the same time, this treaty confirmed the principle of cuius regio eius religio, which gave the freedom of faith to the princes and cities of the time. If that was the beginning of a political international system on which we still base our actions and expectations, we also have to face a reality that went beyond the principles and dynamics of Westphalia. The 21st century doesn't have boundaries. Our international trade is more globalized than ever before. Just like fashion and trends, we could say. Some of the international actors that until today had a secondary role compared to the states, at that time the only main actor in the international system, have now gained a leading role in the international scene. If states are less and less sovereign, then other actors will cross-wisely be able to impose decisions on those countries. Multinationals, banks, and an almost uncontrollable financial system influence the life of a country, affect its population and its future. Behind this dynamic, there is a great risk, which is the commercialization of societies and of human life. The more we find sheltering things, walking away from the community we live in, the more isolation could prevail, destroying everything that is at the base of our societies. If political, economic, and social decisions can be so strongly influenced by a multinational or by the international finance, then the Westphalian system in which states were the only actors can be considered as having failed or have been overtaken. And if it has been overtaken, then the democratic idea of being part of a community that decides by itself where to address its own political, social, and economic action decays. Starting from this premise, it is necessary to reform the sense itself of the international community, and without any doubt, to intervene on diplomacy. What is the sense, in fact, of a diplomatic corps that works every day at national level if many of the political and economic decisions a state takes can only run after an economic trend decided externally? In this context, it is interesting to wonder what would be the role of a single country's diplomacy in a continent like Europe, so heterogeneous and so interconnected? Or what will be the future of the national minorities so heavily pressed by the international system? Diplomacy will have to change, just like all the new international actors. In a sense, religion will have a key role. Every religion wants to raise the spirit of man beyond materialism and wants each and every one of us to relate to each other as brothers. If states will not be able to wait on their own guidelines, then universal religious and non-religious values will be the only glue able to maintain the roots of community that so far have been supported by an internal national system and that now are about to crumble. So, will also religion have a new role? If so, what kind of new diplomatic approach will it have? Communication and dialogue are at the base of the new international order, but other than a formal appeal, will religions be able to build a constructive relation of comprehension and solidarity? In a sense, religions will have to face the main vector which connects diplomacy and religion, tolerance. Religion, in fact, holds, other than the holy features, a series of aspects, circumstances, and deep models that are representative of societies and peoples. Understanding those symbols means to accept the different cultures and needs of several countries simply because religions, for those who have the gift of faith, is the supreme language with which God communicates with man. Religion, in the end, is the way God gives to man to get closer to his brothers and to be bound to the others. And the future is really up to us to be written. Thank you.